Have you ever wondered what it really takes to live off one income? Seems like more and more that conversation is being had. Guys that they want to get married and maybe they're dating a lady and they're like, "Hey, I want to make enough to let my wife stay home and to raise the kids and to run our household and to do it more old school in many ways." And if that's something that you're interested in learning about, if that's some a desire that you have, this conversation is for you. I'm here with my brother-in-law Jake, and we are going to have a conversation about exactly that. What does it really take to live off of one income in, as we record this, the beginning of 2026? Is it really possible? Where does that put you in terms of like the bell curve of people making a living? And then what does it take to do it if it's a desire you really have? So with that, Jake, thanks for being here. How you doing?
Good, man. Yeah, fortunately enough, I'm talking with somebody who does do that, which I mean, that answers the question of is it possible? I'm happy to be able to sit down with a conversation with somebody that has been able to do it. I guess all the information I've received on this topic because I'm in the phase right now of man, I really want to be able to get to a point where I can financially support our family and be able to start a family, knowing that we'll be at that level where I can have my wife stay home and be the CEO of the house. Um, but a lot of the stuff I hear on this topic is not necessarily what I would say is what I want to do, which is a lot of it is, give up what you have, be frivolous in your spending, which is not, I think, a long term solution to this. So that's why I really wanted to sit down and talk about this and really highlight, what that means. And, I'd like to first start off and really highlight what it means to actually live and not just survive, and being able to do that and live and go take trips and enjoy your time with your family when you can and not just work all the time and being the man and doing that, but still being able to have the luxuries that I think are, basic. But
Sure.
yeah,
So I want to just real quick. You said be frivolous with your income, but I'm assuming you meant be frugal with your income.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, yeah. So this is a topic that I'm not going to say I have all the answers on, but as somebody who, for the last, you know, 15 or 16 years has done this, right? My wife has been at home raising our kids. I think that I can speak to at least my experience and the experience of people that I know. One of the things that I think, and maybe this is a little bit of a different opinion that I have than some of the other folks out there, is I think part of the problem is we live in a society today where people are making it sound like it's supposed to be easy and like it's supposed to not require sacrifice. And I think what many of us are trying to wrestle through and find, whether it's a balance or just some sense in, is at what point am I working so much or struggling so hard that even if I'm successful in this endeavor, it negates the benefit of it because I'm never home. I'm not there to be a dad. I'm not there to participate. And is that really better than, some other alternative where maybe my wife's working part-time, et cetera? And I think over time, right, it can change. I remember when I was a kid, there was a point where my mom didn't work and she was raising the kids, and then they got a little older and then she went to work part-time. And so I don't think it's like an all or nothing, but I think what we're really getting at is I just think that more and more people are looking at what's happening in the world. They're looking at what's happening with the family breaking down, with mom and dad gone all the time, and the schools are raising the kids, or the after hours care is raising the kids. And I think people are just going, well, that doesn't seem to be a very good answer either. And at the end of the day, like, one of the things that's, I think, the most challenging in this conversation that we'll get into is, we talk a lot about this idea of the bell curve. And if you think about a natural human desire for most men is, I want to be a great provider, right? I want to provide for my family a life of security, stability, prosperity. I want to provide for my family a life that they enjoy and that we enjoy together. And then you think about, well, what does that look like? Well, in the case of what we're talking about today, it looks like I want to make enough where I can let my wife stay home and raise the kids so the schools aren't raising them. And then you go, okay, well, where would that put you on the bell curve of men financially, of men in a leadership position? And if you look at the statistics, I don't know exactly, but it's probably going to put you pretty far over on the right side. There's probably not a ton of men who are the single breadwinner in their home. And so I think the conversation that we're really having, and I think we'll have this same conversation in different contexts as things go on, is what does it look like to be on the right side of the bell curve as it relates to this particular topic? Because if we do what everyone else does, we're going to get what everyone else gets. And it
Mm.
takes thinking differently, it takes seeing differently, it takes believing differently, but then that all takes acting differently. And so I just thought maybe it would be worth it to provide that context. And then I think your first question, I'll reiterate what I think I heard back to you is, what does it look like to live, to really live your life? Is that essentially what you're asking? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I could put it in clearer terms, it's more, you know, I want to be able to provide for my wife and for my family, but not necessarily give up the like you said, the reward of actually doing that. It's it feels like I know if I was working 80 hours a week and, just absolutely grinding, but not getting to enjoy that time with them, then it's benefiting them, but it's not necessarily benefiting the family. Like you said, raising your children, not being able to be a present father, or, there's problems that come along with necessarily just grinding for the sake of grinding so your family can be at home. I do think there's an honor in that, but it's also, I think there's a balance there that nobody's really talking about. And and that's kind of what I'd like to explore. And honestly, one topic that I would like to talk about is what does that actually look like? If we were to talk numbers, right? Like if we were to throw numbers out there of, if we were to work through, it takes $200,000 a year based on the lifestyle I want. I think that number's fluid for whoever might actually want to live this life, right? And family basis, like, oh, maybe your wife spends a little extra money, or maybe your husband likes to spend a little extra money, and it's like being able to balance that. I really think it's like, what is that number to get to that point for a person listening to this to be like, let me do some self analysis. What is that number and how can I realistically get there?
Yeah, and I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's a team sport. So if you're married and you think you have a number in your brain and your wife thinks that it's a different number, you're probably going to have an issue, right? And so this is where, again, I think that our generations are, and I say this often, we're like the first couple of generations in human history who can be sitting here having this conversation. I mean, really,
Right.
every single generation for most of human history, their conversation was not like, am I living my purpose? Am I enjoying my lifestyle? Am I getting to travel and vacation as much as I want? Like they were spending most of their time trying to survive, right? And one of the examples that I often give is my dad. My dad's been a bricklayer my whole life, and I can remember being a kid, and I'd go be his hod carrier for a day or 2 days or 3 days, and we'd leave the house at 5:30 in the morning, freezing cold, and then we'd go work until 4:35, scorching hot, and it was hard work, and he did it every day. He's still doing it, and his body's shot. And one of the things I think that we have to be careful of, and I'm not dodging the question, I'm gonna get to the question, but I want to provide context, is like I think about my dad all the time and I go, my dad did that so that I could even have the opportunity to even be talking about this with you. And other people's dads and their moms and their grandparents did that same thing. And so I think that we have to put this inside of a context that's a little different than what our cultural context is, because our culture is obsessed with comfort. Our culture is obsessed with enjoyment. But that's not what we were created for, right? I mean, if you just had a vacation day every single day for the next 10 years, you would hate vacation, right?
Right.
Because part of what we desire in our life is we desire challenge, we desire friction, we desire problems to solve. And so I think at the core of what we're talking about is you have to think about it in your, like, let's take you as an example, is, well, what really matters the most? Because it really doesn't take that much to live off of one income, right? You could probably live off of one income, and I know there's people who are doing it on 50 or $60,000 a year. Now,
Mm.
is that going to be living the lifestyle that you probably want? Well, probably not, at least not in the front end. But the question then becomes, do you want the lifestyle, or excuse me, do you want, your wife to stay home, or do you want the lifestyle? Because in the beginning, it's very often that you're not going to have both. Now, does that mean you can't have both? No. And this is where I think maybe we can spend most of our conversation is, listen, if you want to make, let's say that what we're really talking about here isn't just I want my wife to be able to stay home, I want to live on one income. Let's say the conversation is I want to thrive financially on one income, right? Well, that's a whole completely different conversation, right? You can get by on one income, and I think that it's very beneficial to do it. But if the conversation we're really having is what does it take to thrive on one income, that's a very different conversation. And I would say we could boil that down into one thing. And this is the thing that I wish every when kids went to school, I wish this is what I we would teach them, is that if you know how to create value for other people, you will probably thrive financially. Now, when I say value, I don't mean sometimes people will take that and think, oh, what if you're doing something like serving orphans? Isn't that creating value? Yes. I'm not talking about that kind of value. I'm talking about value in the marketplace, right? In
Mm.
the marketplace where we exchange solutions for dollars, right? The more value you can create by understanding how to solve people's problems and help them achieve their goals, the more you're going to thrive financially. And so here's what I would say is like, let's say that you've been doing HVAC maintenance. You're an HVAC tech. You've been doing that for the last 5 years. You're making 85,000 bucks a year. That's $7,000 a month. You're netting, let's say, 5,000 a month. And you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna support my family on this one income. Then I say, well, listen, here's where it's so much harder, I think, today than it was, let's say, 50 years ago, is because we have fake money, right?
Mm.
We live in a monetary system where you, as an HVAC tech, making $85,000 a year, if you're really good with your 85,000, like you can live a fine life. But are you going to live a life where you're going on multiple vacations or you're putting your kids in private school or whatever? Probably not. And I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to, well, then we have to go, okay, you're great as an HVAC tech. And that does create some value in the marketplace. But if you needed to, let's say, double your income, you're probably not going to double your income doing what you've been doing. You have to then translate, you have to transfer what you've learned, what you've become really good at, into something that can create value for more people, right? You got to learn how to take those skill sets and figure out, and I talk to my staff all the time about this, like the reason that people hire us to do what we do is because they have a goal that they want somebody to help them achieve. They have problems that keep them from the goal that they want somebody to help them solve. And if we're really good at that, they'll pay us. And if we're not very good at it, well, then they won't. And if the better we get at it, the bigger the problems that we can solve, the bigger the goals that we can help people achieve, and the more they'll pay us to do it. And so I would say is part of what you guys, or all of us really, what we have to figure out is like, and I always say this is a rough number. It's not exact, but just think about this. If you want to make $150,000 a year, do you have a skill set that can go out and bring into your business $1.5 million a year, wherever you work? Okay, because if you can charge about 10% of the value that you bring to the table every year, every month, every whatever, you're probably going to be just fine. And so to me, it's not so much of a, we talk so much about money, dollars and cents, but what we should, I think, talk about most that would be more helpful is talking about it's about value. It's like, how do I create enough value that somebody is willing to exchange the money that they don't want to part with? Because that's how bad they need a solution to this particular problem. That's how bad they want to reach this particular goal.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know if that
interesting.
answers your question, but
No, no, no. It definitely does. I think one distinguishing that I'd like to clarify too is when you say value and you say marketplace, for people who may not know, um, you may look at a teacher and you say they create some serious value. They're teaching children how to learn how to navigate society or whatever, right? But that's not necessarily the value that you're talking about when you're talking about creating $1 million worth of value to get $100,000. That's the kind of value that you're talking about. I think the distinguishment, which maybe you can answer this a little bit better than I can, is how do you evaluate that value, right? Like how do you? I think you sent me this video last week, and it was talking about being closer to the revenue makes it easy to evaluate your value, right? So being closer to like we've always talked about sales. Like sales is you get a direct response from the value
Sure.
you provide. So you
Yep.
say I've done 10 sales this week equaling up to $1 million. I should get paid 100,000, right? And that's easy. So I guess for the person who's navigating through this as to, it may feel impossible because I already feel like I'm creating a lot of value.
Hmm.
I guess that's the benchmark, is like, how can you make this feel not impossible by looking at value differently?
Yeah. So let's go back to the teacher's example. So are teachers valuable? Most certainly, at least the ones who are good,
Yeah.
right? But we also have a lot of systems built into the teaching environment where, like, if you're not good, you can't get fired, right? And so if you look at like teaching as an example, it's not to say that teachers aren't good. It's not to say that teachers aren't creating value. What it is to say is that, like, how many teachers are there in America? I don't know, millions.
Yeah.
So like, now let me ask you this. Even in teachers, even in teaching, there is a bell curve, right?
Mm.
Do you think there's
Hmm.
anybody that could call themselves a teacher that makes 10 million bucks a year? 100%. They teach
Yeah.
online courses. They teach courses over here. And are they only teaching courses about how to make money? No. Some of these people are making millions of dollars a year teaching people how to fish, or teaching people how to knit, or teaching people how to sew. But here's the deal, they're doing it differently than everybody that's stuck in that little box inside of the school system.
Mm.
Now, here's the deal, may listen to this and go, yeah, but like what you're talking about isn't a solution for the masses. And I go, yeah, that's true. Because and this is the problem, like, you look at communism, you look at socialism, and what so often they're trying to do is flatten the bell curve. But the bell curve is a part of nature. It's like a natural law. It's a distribution curve, right? It's like the 80-20 principle. These things they happen no matter where you go, no matter what you're doing. The reality is did God create us all with equal value? Yes. But does that mean that the skills that we bring to the table based on when we are born and the environment we are born into is has the same value in the marketplace? No. And when I say in the marketplace, what I mean, like, people say the economy or the marketplace. Well, what is that? The way I think about it, it's just the place where people are willing to go to exchange the money that they have for a solution to a problem they really want to get rid of, right? And so the way that we have to think about this when we talk about value is, let's say you're the same HVAC technician. If you're just doing what all the other HVAC technicians are getting, you're going to get the mean or the median or the average of what they're getting. So if you don't want to get what everyone else is getting, you have to figure out how to take what you've learned how to do and do what nobody else is doing with it, or what very few people are doing with it. And what does that take? It takes creativity, it takes innovation, it takes risk, it takes hard work. So, going back to our initial example, it very well may take working 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week for a little while, right? But if you're doing it well, the goal is then to hire other people to help you solve problems and create value. And so this is what I think that our school system, and maybe it's something else, but to me, our school system was created to create factory workers. Okay,
Mm.
to create people who could punch a button and screw a screw and do the same thing over and over and over and over again. But if you look at all of human history, that's not what we were created to do. That sucks the creativity out of us. That sucks the humanity out of us. And it just turns us into these little robots that have flesh and bone and blood. That's not how God created us. And that's why I think you see all this frustration and depression and anger. Because what we're really talking about isn't actually, I'm not making enough money. That's part of it. But also part of it is, why do I feel like a cog in a wheel? Because the day you turn 5, when they put you in that chair in school and they told you, raise your hand, don't talk unless you're spoken to, follow the rules, get in a single line, you started becoming indoctrinated with robot syndrome. And what
Mm.
I think people really desire, and I think what's at the heart of your question, even if we go all the way back to where we started, is, how do I do work that's meaningful, that provides enough for me to live a decent life, because a decent life in most people's estimation today isn't like both parents working 60 hours a week and someone else raising our kids. And the way that we do that, Jake, is we get back to creativity that creates value, that solves problems, helps people achieve their goals, and makes the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I actually wrote this verse down before we started this conversation because I knew we were going to get to this point at some point. But I wrote down this Romans 12:2, which I know you're familiar with. You've told it to me 1,000 times. Is do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that has just been the driver of me really pushing towards wanting to create more value than the factory worker, right? And being able to do that.
Well,
You
can
know,
I
I
stop you
was
real
just,
fast?
yeah.
Because I'm going to let you say what you're going to say, but I want, when you say create more value than the factory worker, um, what I want to make sure that we convey properly, because I don't think I've done it so far, is the way that we create value for people is by serving them.
Mm,
Great businesses serve people the best. And so it's not that it's not that a factory worker doesn't have value. It's that a factory worker is limited in their ability to serve people. And the
mm,
way that we create value is by being of service. And that's why people get so frustrated in their jobs, because they're like, I don't feel like what I'm doing has any meaning. And why do they feel that way? Because they inherently were created in a way where God gave them a longing inside of their being to serve people. Right?
mm,
So I wanted to insert that because I don't want people to get the idea that what we're saying is that people's work isn't valuable. I'm saying that people feel frustrated in their work because they have a longing to serve people and create more value than the job and the role that they often feel stuck in allows them to do.
mm. Yeah, I mean, that definitely tied into my next thing because my next statement that I was going to say is when you look at something like the DMV, where DMV is the only DMV, there's no competition there, right? It's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, probably about as socialist or communist as it gets in terms of our society, right? You look at the DMV and you look at people working at the DMV. I just want to ask, how many people do you see out of the DMV that are becoming millionaires? Right? Like there's nothing there. There's no incentive to do anything more, do anything better, and to serve better, to create more value because there's nothing.
Exactly. And so one of the things, going back to your Romans 12 too, says, do not be conformed to the world, to the patterns of the world, to the system of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the word transformed in the Greek is like the same word that you could use for this idea of remodeling, like rip it out and put it new, like make it new. And so, if you think about in the Bible, right, there's two stories come to mind right off the top of my head where the Bible talks about bricks. And the first story is in Exodus when the Israelites went into slavery in Egypt, and when they were enslaved, the Pharaoh made them make bricks, right? And he just kept increasing their quota over and over and over again. And then later on, before that, there was this in the Tower of Babel, that story. It says they decided to start making bricks. And it makes me think that, the empire Egypt is a picture of the world in the Bible, the worldly system, right? And what does the worldly system always want us to do? It always wants to form us into a brick, right?
Mm,
When we come together, it wants to make us all the same, just like the factory jobs, just like the school system, just like all these other places where they're trying to take our uniqueness away. But what the Bible calls us is it calls us living stones, right? What's the difference between a stone and a brick, Jake?
it's not carved.
The stone, every stone is unique,
Yeah.
and every brick is the same. Okay. And so one of the ways that you can tell, and I even see it in my businesses, right? Like the way that regulations work, it it's like I have to fight against turning my own business into brick making because of all the regulations and all the hurdles and all the hoops. See, this is why the DMV is the DMV, because there is no creativity, there is no outside the lines, there is no make it better, there is no innovation, there is no creativity, and that's why people, so many, not all, but so many hate working there. And why they hate going there is because
Mm,
it's turned what we were created to do, which was be living stones, and it just keeps trying to turn us into bricks and bricks and bricks. And so for me, when I think about, even AI, people are so afraid of AI. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it could go really bad. But at the same time, some of the things that we're talking about that people already inherently hate doing, right? If we can continue to have these kinds of conversations and they can become more mainstream, and we can encourage people to be creative again and to close their eyes, like the thing that makes us human in so many ways, the thing that makes us like God in so many ways is we can close our eyes, we can imagine something that doesn't exist, and then we can go create it, right? And we've sucked that out of so many people in the world. And I go, man, if we can help to activate that in people, yeah, then maybe robots start taking the jobs that people hate, just like bulldozers did. And then maybe, just maybe, and I'm not saying how, I don't know how it's going to end, but all I want to do is help to awaken people in the interim to say, go create, go do the thing. And so going back, because I think we might be getting a little esoterical here. Okay, so what does that mean for uh, raising your family on one income? It's like, well, the people who are rewarded the most financially are the ones who can do that. Like, think of
Mm.
Elon Musk. People can say whatever they want about the guy, but that guy, more than any guy in our lifetime for sure, and maybe Steve Jobs before him, can close his eyes and he can imagine something that seems so outlandish,
Mm.
and then he can go create it and make it real. And that's why he's the richest guy in the world. And people can hate it all they want, but the fact of the matter is, it's because he's creating so much value for society. He's serving people. And I know there's going to be people who really don't like that I just said that, but the fact of the matter is he's doing something at a massive scale that other people in the world find valuable. Because what people find valuable are things that help them solve their goal or reach their goals and solve their problems. And you can hate it as much as you want, but that's never going to change.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I think what I'd like, if going back to that same thing, if we were talking to the HVAC technician and put this in terms of the HVAC technicians, you know, what they're experiencing, $80,000 a year, and they're wanting to be able to bring their family home and not have
Yeah.
their spouse work, then what does that look like in his scenario, right? Just to give a real Elon Musk is a great example, right? But what does that look like for the person that's working, a reasonable job that but wants to go to the next level?
Yeah, well, let's not use the HVAC tech. Let's use you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're making a good living. You're a project manager at a commercial construction company, right? Future looks bright, and let's just say you're sitting in the HVAC technician's chair, and you're like, man, I to get to where I want to go, I need to double my income. Is that a
Mm.
fair? Let's just say, is that a fair
Yeah.
example?
Yeah.
It's like, great. Okay, well, then you only got so many options. Okay, and this is what I this is how I think about it. You got to think about it realistically, and you got to think about it numerically. You go, okay, well, let's say that I don't know how much you make, but let's say you're the HVAC technician and you're making 85 and you want to make 150. Okay, well, that means there's only so many jobs that you can do with your skill set that make twice as much money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a fact. And so an HVAC technician, maybe the next job, I don't know their industry that well, but maybe the next level is the service manager or the new install manager or the director of a territory, right? It's going from, so like there's a book called The E Myth Revisited by, I think it's Michael Gerber, and one of the things he talks about is you have the visionary, and the visionary is like usually the business owner, and then you have the project manager. So that might be like a CFO or a project manager or whatever. And then you have the technician. Well, when you're making 85 grand a year, you're the technician. You're like the lowest, not that you're low, but in this ladder of value, you're at the bottom. And
Mm.
so if you want to make the next rung, well, then you got to start thinking about how to become a project manager, right? And then let's just say we're not even going to go to the top yet. Let's just say we're hovering here around project manager. Well, what does that take? Well, that takes understanding the business that you're in at a different level. Because when you're an HVAC technician, you're probably going out there and you're really good at looking at the coils and the filters and the ducting and all these different things. But the project manager, he's looking at scheduling, he's looking at efficiency, he's looking at profit margins, he's looking at how fast you can get jobs done, he's looking at where guys are going and what the best crews are and all these other things. So it starts with education. It starts
Mm.
with learning, what does my company desire? What are my company's goals? What are the problems that I see that my company would love to solve? And then how can I learn enough about that to then go offer to help them solve their problems and achieve their goals? Because a lot of people, they just are afraid to ask for the next opportunity. But part of the reason they're afraid to ask for the next opportunity is because they know they haven't done any work to be worthy of getting the opportunity. So what I tell people is, before you start trying to go do the next thing, right? Because a lot of people fail that way. They're like, I'm tired of doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to go do the next thing, even though I don't know anything about it. It's like, take some time and educate yourself. Take some time and educate yourself on what is the big picture here of what I'm doing. What are the guys that are making the kind of money, or the gals that are making the kind of money I desire? What do they know? What are they doing? And I think I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I would start if I was just literally trying to go, how do I go from where I am to double?
Well, yeah, I think that's super helpful. When I think of in terms of me, and I think this is another big struggle, which if you were somebody in this world, kind of same realm of, let's say you're the analogy I've always used is a field analogy, which you practically the same analogy you did is there's the guys in the weeds picking out the weeds of the field, and then there's a guy at the edge of the field looking across the whole field checking rows, and then there's a guy in the tower and he's overlooking those, and then there's the owner, whatever, up in the plane in the sky overseeing it all. So one thing that always happens, which I'm sure you can talk to this as well, is you being a business owner. There's a lot of times that you get brought back down into the weeds, right? You get asked or requested because there's a problem in the weeds, and they don't know the person that's working in the weeds doesn't know how to solve it, right?
Hmm.
So if you were that person in the weeds, or let's say you're the person on the edge of the rows and you're wanting to double your income in the next whatever, is helping somebody solve that problem of the weeds so the owner doesn't have to keep coming down to the weeds, right? So there's a problem to be solved there. And, one thing going back to what we talked about earlier is what I've been kind of exploring for my business that I'm working for as well, for my general contractor, is what are the problems that are directly affecting the revenue, right? So like if there's multiple problems that I've tried to solve in the past, like man, we got to work on our systems here, right? But not a lot of them have been super, demanded by the owner, which we've talked about this before. But the closer you are to a one burning problem, and most of the time that problem is going to be something in the weeds or somebody on the edge of the field that you are dealing with every day that the owner doesn't necessarily deal with every day. If you solved that problem, then you'll more than likely, like you said, create enough value to go to the next level.
Yeah. So I just wrote down. So I think I want to I want to respond in two ways. The first is, the technician, when they're out on site, they're primarily responsible for their own problems, right? The problems that they're assigned, the problems that they might create. When you go up to the project manager level, you have a different scale. Now you're in charge or responsible for like 20 people's problems. And
Right.
then you go up to the business owner, and now you're responsible for or in charge of like 1,000 people's problems. And so this is where I say it starts with you. It starts with us becoming a more capable person. Most people can't handle their own problems. Okay, and then they want to go and they want to double their income, and they don't understand that when they double their income, they're going to exponentially increase the amount of problems they're responsible for. Okay,
Mm.
so that the first thing is, I think it starts with us becoming more capable. That's why, like education, the Bible says people perish for the lack of knowledge, right? It also
Mm.
says knowledge puffs up. So it's not that you want to become so knowledgeable that you're prideful, but you don't want to be so ignorant that you perish. And so it's like, if you want to double your income, well, have you doubled what you know? Have you tripled? Have you quadrupled what you know? So that's the first
Right.
thing. The second thing is, when we talk about, and I think this is a two part. It's towards the business owner and also the employee. Most of us in the business world do a really poor job of explaining to our team and our company, everyone that works there, what our goals are. And so,
Mm.
because I think a lot of people tell you the best thing to do is create a product or a service that solves someone's problem. It's like, yeah, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is create a product or a service that helps someone reach their goal. Because if you think about it, your business that you work for, they have goals. And often the problem is you don't know what they are.
Mm.
Okay. And so what you can see, what's the most visible oftentimes is the problems. But I think I told you this the other day. There's a difference between trying to convince somebody to solve a problem they don't care that much about versus say, hey, I know that you really care about this problem because it's keeping you from this goal you have. And if I found a solution, or I can help you solve that problem so that you can achieve your goals. Like, you have to always think about that the problems, so the problems that you want to solve in business are always related to the goals they want to achieve. So
Mm.
what we're selling to, like, and when I say selling, if I'm an employee that wants to double my income, right? Well, right now they have hired me because me being in that role is helping them achieve their goals somehow and solve problems. Like, they don't want to do that work, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when I want to double my income, it's like, how can I, like you're saying, it's easier if you're closer to the revenue stream to quantify the value of solving this problem that you found. And the problem could simply be like, hey, the owner doesn't want to manage 25 people anymore. So I can come in, I've learned all this stuff, I can understand scheduling, yada, yada, yada. I can solve that problem for him. Why? Because his goal now isn't just making more money, his goal is having a life again. Right. And so it's like, people, this is what I call it, the value loop. It starts by understanding what people want. And then if you know what they want and they have it, they don't need you.
Mm.
They need you and they'll pay you because they want it and they don't have it. That's where the problem comes in. And what you're doing is you're offering a solution that will help them get what they want. And when you can do that, that creates value. And when I say it creates value, what I mean is that's what that person finds valuable enough to pay for it. And when you get better and better at going through the loop of, this is what they want, this is the problem keeping them from get it, I can help them solve that problem so they can get what they want and they'll pay me for it. And then you just do that loop over and over and over again. And the more that what you solve either solves a more valuable problem for the other person or solves the same problem for more people, is the way that you make more money.
Yeah, I mean, um, maybe for people listening that might doubt this, right? There's going to be the let's say we're talking the same company, the HVAC company, and maybe you're a HR person in the company. And you're like, man, I don't know if there's any problems that I can solve. I'm in HR, like there's not there. But what I'd add is, that is always the lens that, I can say this confidently because I lived in that lens for a long time until recently when we started really diving into this topic of creating value and therefore getting compensated for that value. Of, there's always the problem. It's the problem that I feel like most people have is it does take sacrifice and work to be able to learn how to solve those problems and also identify them. Like it's not an easy thing to do. I think it was Tony Robbins that was talking about it. Is one of the most valuable skills that you can have is pattern recognition, and then when that comes into pattern recognition, what to do with that, right? The problem of solving whatever pattern you're seeing. And that there's always going to be a value for that. It does take work and it does take time because I mean I've spent I can even countless hours of sitting there, trying to solve these problems that I see in my business because there's hundreds of them. And it's like if I were to just solve one of those, the correct one, like you're saying, I there and I have been compensated. You will get compensated for it, right?
Yeah, and I think this is where, like, our videos here and our conversations are really taking a turn, because for so long it's like I wanted to just try and convey concepts that I've learned along the way that could help everybody. And the reality is what I know, and this is why, like, I keep coming back to the bell curve, is because let's say we go back to the HR example, okay, and let's say we had 100 people and they were all in HR and they were all listening to this video. Okay, here's the reality: if you averaged out the 100 people's income from something in HR, there would be a bell curve.
Mm.
There'd be people making like $25,000 a year, and there'd be a whole bunch of people making, let's say, 40 to 85,000 dollars a year, and then there'd be maybe one person that was making $1 million a year. Do you think the person making $1 million a year is working in HR for somebody else?
No.
Probably not. Do you think the person making a $500,000 a year is working for somebody else doing something in HR. Maybe like maybe they're maybe they're the director of HR for a publicly traded company, but very unlikely, right? Most of the reality is the people that are on the far right hand side of the bell curve in that conversation in HR are running an HR business.
Mm,
They're helping other companies, other people, other whatever it is with HR. Because here's the reality: when you're in a business doing HR, it is very hard to quantify the value you're creating for the organization the same way you would if you were, like, let's say, in a sales role, right? It doesn't mean that you're not valuable. It just means like we all have to play by the rules and by the human nature in the game that actually exists, not the one we want to exist. So I would say to somebody, if they're in HR and they're, let's say they're making $75,000 a year and they want to double their income, it's like, well, there's really not very many options to do it. It's the same conversation we just had with this HVAC guy. It's okay, well, go find a company where right now you're at a company that, let's say, has 20 employees. Well, go find a company that has 500 employees and prove to those people that you are so overqualified for this 20 company role that they would be dumb not to have you, right?
mm,
And then go do the same thing you're doing at a bigger company. Other option would be, if you've learned so much and you see where all the pitfalls are and all the issues are in this little 20-person HR company, guess what? Or this 20-person company in the HR department, there's probably a lot of other companies that are the same size or similar size that have the same problems, and their HR people might not be as good as you. And you could start a business to go into those companies and help those companies have their HR people do a better job. So it's like, if you think about the bell curve, like even in the wealthiest people in the world, um, the vast majority of the wealthiest people in the world are not wealthy from investing; they're wealthy from running businesses,
mm.
right? And a very small percentage of the wealthiest people are wealthy from investing. Why is that? Because the marketplace pays for solutions. Like, I made a video recently about Amazon. Why is Amazon so valuable? Well, because they know that people want a whole lot of choices. They don't want to have to leave their house. They want to know if the product they're buying is going to suck or not. They want to get it fast. They want to be able to return it easy. We could keep going on and on and on. And does Amazon deliver everything that you want in those categories? Yeah. Do they do it better than everyone else? Pretty much. Does everybody use them as a result? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it's like literally you're just creating little microcosms of Amazon, whether it's at your job as a technician or it's at your job as a project manager or it's running a business that you start. The mindset is the same. You just got to find the value loop. And like you said, and this is the part, it takes hard work, dude. Like, it's
Yeah.
not easy to just figure out what people want because most people don't know what they want. We've had that discussion. And so that's where I think it's like Elon Musk, he has to be creative because most people don't walk around saying, like, Steve Jobs created the iPhone and people didn't even know they wanted it, but he knew they wanted it because he understood how people think and act and the desires they have. And so it's like, yeah, that takes hard work. You don't really learn that in a book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that also for the person maybe listening and for me as well is like I'm working through this process right now of identifying these problems that we're talking about. Let's say for the industry that I know best is construction, commercial construction, and looking through these problems that these groups of people are having, and I'm trying right now. I'm trying to find the problem that is so duplicatable, I guess this is the right word, to another business who would probably have that same problem, right? And there's like another general contractor, let's say, that would have that same problem. There's a business in there somewhere. To be in one of those problems, there's something like, okay, there's this company that's having this problem. How can I solve that problem for somebody else and make a business out of that, right? And I think that's one way. And going back to the original question of this conversation, which is how can you actually you know live off of one income, right? Like how can I, wanting to start a family, actually live off one income? And I think if we were to encompass it all in this one part, which maybe you can answer this a little bit better, is find the places where you can create so much value to get to that goal, like not to the value, like whether it's for one company, whether it's for 100 companies, whether it's for 1,000 people, right? Like, how can you create that much value to where you can live off the income that you're looking at?
Yeah, just wrote down as you were saying that, it's the place that we started the video is actually, if somebody's watching this and they're, excuse me, and they're in that, they're in that mindset, they're like, how can I double my income? That's the wrong first question. Because see, that first question is focused on what I want, my goals. And what I'm trying to say is that the way you get, like Zig Ziglar always used to say, you can have just about anything in your life you want if you'll help enough other people get what they want. And so for me, people are so fixated on how do I get what I want? How do I make sure I have a big enough income to do this and this and this? And let's say they focus 85% of their time on what they want and how they're going to get what they want. They're probably never going to get what they want, because what they should be doing is spending 85% of their time not thinking about what they want, but how they can get so good at getting somebody else something that they want, that they would, that there is no other alternative but them to as a result have what they want. It's like
Mm,
we weren't created to sit here and just live for what we want. We were created to help other people get what they want, what's good for them, what they need. And to the degree that we embrace that actual purpose for our lives instead of the selfish purpose, is the degree to which, and again, I'm gonna wrap this and then I'm gonna tie it to something else, but that's the degree to which these kinds of problems will take care of themselves. Okay. Now, somebody could be watching this and go, yeah, but Zach, I don't care about that. What I care about is like, how do I help 50 more orphans? And it's like, great. It's the same thing. It's just we're not talking about money. We're talking about, well, if you get really good at helping more orphans, like the thing that you're actually desiring, which is serving people, is going to take care of itself. That's like what your focus is, and God will take care of you. So it's not just about money. We're having a conversation about money, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's like if you're an HVAC technician, if you're a HR person, if you're a college student, I don't, whoever you are, it's like, yeah, it's important to have a goal. It's important to know what you desire. Write it down on paper, put it on a sticky, put it on your mirror. And then you know what? Don't spend all your time focusing on that. Spend all your time focusing. And I think we should give people a couple takeaways. I've written them down here, but spend all your time focusing on how to help people get what they want.
mm.
And you'll probably be okay. And so I think one of the things that would be actually a helpful thing for somebody listening to or watching this to do is to go home and over the next week, just start writing down as you interact with people, whether it's at your work, whether it's at home, whether it's random conversations you have, start just writing down what kind of goals can I actually tell people have. And then as you're actually communicating with people, ask them, you know, what are your goals? What are you shooting for? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your desires? And because part of it is just starting to hear from people, what do they want? What are they after? What are they chasing? What are they pursuing? And then you can start to also identify. You don't have to ask people what their problems are, but you can start to identify as you go through your week, like, what problems do I keep seeing at my job? What is the thing that we just keep running into over and over again? What are the things that my managers complain about or are frustrated about? You know, or that they make us afraid about because they tell us if this doesn't get fixed, I might have to lay you guys off. Like, actually start paying attention to the goals people have and the problems they have. And then you can start you got your list written down, you got goals, you got problems, you got people, and then you start thinking about, well, do I know how to solve any of those problems? Could I help anybody achieve these goals? And so part of it is just getting into a practice of thinking about that. And as you think about that, that's how you'll start to, like, the light bulb moments will start to happen where you go, oh, this is an idea. This is an idea. And I'll tell you, dude, I had to try like 12 ideas before I ended up in the business that I'm in. Right. So
Right.
if and you've been doing the same thing, it's like, but you're sharpening your axe, right?
Mm.
You're getting out of the cog in a wheel mindset. You're getting out of the punch the button and screw the screw mentality. And you're getting into, hey, I'm here to create value by helping people solve problems and reach their goals. And like the more that you exercise that muscle, I think the more that you'll see these things start to take care of themselves, because doing that forces you to grow and it forces you to know. And you need both of those to double your income.
Yeah. No, and I mean, maybe this is a point where we can kind of wrap it up, but I wrote that down for myself, and I think for somebody listening, that's like, that might be a lot of work at first, but that muscle slowly builds, of identifying that. And I'd say,
Well,
there are problems that are not going to be easy to solve.
yeah, and here's the thing. This is again going back to the bell curve. It is hard, and that's why most people won't get what we're talking about because the fact of the matter is they won't do it. And it's like we don't even have to be talking about doubling your income. We can talk about, let's say you're going in next week for your annual review because it's the end of January, and let's say you want to ask for a 10% raise. And it's like, well, if you can't actually explain to your employer why you being there is helping them achieve their goals and what problems you're solving, then you have no business expecting to get the 10% raise.
Mm.
If you want to go in, you want to get 10% more money, and you can't clearly articulate why you should get 10% more money because you help the company achieve these goals or solve these problems, you're not going to get the 10% raise. And then let's say this, let's say you're watching this and you think you might be on the, like, you might be getting fired. You're not sure. It's like, well, think about this. In your job every day, are you helping your company solve problems and achieve goals, or are you creating problems that they have to deal with? Because
Mm.
an employee will always be employed if they're really spectacular at helping the company achieve its goals and solving the problems that the company hired them to solve. The minute that you get it, you are an impediment to the goals or you become a problem is the minute you lose your job. And so this is my thing, man. Like the best employees in crazy recessions, they're not usually the ones losing their job. What
Mm.
I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, how can I help people move right on the bell curve? Because it will always be there. And most people who listen to what we talk about will say, have some excuse for why it's not going to work, think I'm an idiot, think this, think that. And guess what? Most of them will stay right where they are. It's the people who actually believe the things that we're talking about are possible and they actually go and take action on them. Those are the people that are actually going to see their lives slowly but surely move further and further right on the bell curve. You and I are going to have other conversations. Today it's about, how do I live off one income? Someday it's going to be, how do I stay healthy? How do I move? How do I stay married, right? And at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's like, how can our conversations just help people who actually believe that what everyone tells them isn't possible? How can we actually help them move right towards realizing that it is possible? And maybe not the only people, most people who don't experience it, it's because they believe it's not possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the bow on the top right there. And for me, I'd say I started off. There's this analogy spinning through my head throughout our conversation right now. If there's in any company, for somebody working for a company, there's a canoe, and there's 10 people in the canoe. Well, in the of those 10 people, there's going to be 6 of them that are just sitting, right? And then there's going to be 3 of them that are actively paddling against the canoe. And then there's going to be one at the front that is steering out, working its butt off to keep that canoe going. And there's what we're kind of talking about, which is this is kind of part of our conversation of what we had today, is getting to that front seat, getting to that one person at the top of the bell curve. Even if it's what we're trying to do is really put 2 people in the front, right? Put 3 people in the front. Shift the bell curve to where there's more there of people actively trying to solve problems, actively trying to do this. And for people that may not know, like I was the person that was in the middle for a long time, and now I'm slowly transitioning to try to be that person in the front, and it's possible for sure. And I'm excited for our future conversations also, and I know there's going to be value out of it. So
Me too. I'm going to say one more thing, and then we'll end this conversation. But to me, I think of it like a football team. Most people who watch football, they understand that the quarterback's probably going to make the most money, and the running back and the receivers, they're going to probably make the second and third, and the offensive and the defensive linemen, not so much anymore, but generally speaking, are going to make less.
right.
And the offensive linemen, that might not be their favorite thing, but they understand why. The quarterback's having to do 10 times more interviews. He's getting talked about 20 times more. Like there's a different level of pressure, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like when we go back to the folks that are in HR or the folks that are in process management or whatever, it's like part of what I want to do here is help everyone understand that we're not all created to be the quarterback, right?
Mhm.
Some of us are offensive linemen, some of us are linebackers, and some of us are the punter, and we play like 12 to 8 plays a game, right? But uh, what I want to do is create a team of people who understand the role on the team that they play, and inside that role, they want to be on the right side of the bell curve.
Mm,
They're not all going to make $1 million a year, and they're not all going to do this, and they're not going to do that. But their focus, what they're committed to, like in the Bible, it says, finish the race, run the race, run it well, do all things as if unto Christ. And so what I want to help people do is say, hey, like, I'm not saying you have to do what I do. I'm not saying you have to do what you do, Jake. I'm just saying, like, whatever God gifted you in, are you pursuing being the best that you can be at that thing on the team that we're on? Because the more that we can develop teams that operate like this, all of a sudden the bell curve starts to shift. See, communism shifts the whole bell curve to the left, and that's a
mm,
problem. Look at
yeah.
Venezuela. Look at Cuba, right? Free markets shift the bell curve to the right, right?
Mm,
And so that's an economic example. But the point is, it's like, I just want to help people wherever they're at in life and the things that they're passionate about, the things they want to pursue to the degree they're good for them, just realize they can move right on the bell curve. So with that, if you're still here an hour later, thanks for watching or listening wherever you're watching or listening to this. We appreciate you being here. If you liked it, hit the like button, and we'd love to hear a comment. Maybe you could tell us this is what you're struggling with, or this is where you see problems that you might need help figuring out how to solve, or opportunities and goals that you see that you're maybe not sure how to help people achieve. We'd love to engage and help you out if we can. And if you thought this was valuable and maybe somebody that you know could benefit from it, we'd love if you'd share it with them. And that would really help. We're trying to get the message out. These are the kinds of conversations we're going to have more and more. And so we appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.